Well, it's a really great pleasure to be here with this enchanting woman, Angela Allen, who I had the pleasure of meeting here last year in Bologna when she came to present Carol Reed's The Third Man, and has been sort of on tour, I guess, a bit with that restoration for the last year. But in her 8-decade career in movies, she was the script supervisor on more than 90 films, including 14 directed by John Huston, including Reflections in a Golden Eye, which was presented here yesterday, and Beat the Devil, which will be presented, I believe, on Saturday. 5 films with John Frankenheimer, 5 films with Franco Zeffirelli, and in addition to movies by Robert Aldrich, Sidney Lumet, Roman Polanski, Don Siegel, Richard Quine, Ken Russell, and many, many others. And we will attempt today to go through some highlights of that remarkable career. But I thought it would be maybe a good place to start, Angela, just by talking a little bit about how you were first bitten by the movie bug as a young woman. You were already, I think, by the time you worked on The African Queen, you were only 22 years old, but you had already worked on several films, so you started very young. How did it all come about?
Yes, it did start. I said, well, today it would have started very early because I didn't go to university, and I realized I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. And literally, in those days, you could kind of walk around London and knock on the doors. You found out where the offices were. And one sent me down to a studio that no longer exists. It was called Horton Hall in Isleworth, from Lake Calder, his group of studios. And I was put as an assistant. I got the job as an assistant on a film called Night Beat. And after 2 weeks, I was sent out on a second unit. It was the coldest winter, I believe, on record, down the docks of London, and it was a freezing cold winter, and you didn't have moon boots and all those sort of things in those days. But I survived that, and I thought, well, I suppose if I can survive this, hopefully other things might be a little easier.
And had you just had growing up, had you just been a film buff? Did you go to the cinema a lot? I mean, was there a desire sort of to be a part of it, even, at a very early age?
Well, I was taken to the cinema, and my first film was Shirley Temple. And I don't think it is called The Little Drummer, but she was, being a drummer girl in it. And of course, I came home wanting to be, say, Shirley Temple. And I wanted to be an actress, obviously. And then, I used to go to the cinema. My mother always liked going to the cinema, and I did. I used to go, probably Saturday mornings, to children's films and things like that. And my brother worked, when he started, he went into the theatre. So I was really very much drawn to the theatre or to the film world, certainly not to office work. I tried it very briefly, and I really wasn't very good secretarial material.
What made you good script supervisor material?
Well, that I don't know. I did do my training, which today, I was on 3 films with 3 different women as my boss, and I was very lucky because they were very caring and they taught me a lot. You could ask them questions. And in those days, the filming wasn't as quick as it is today, so that while the cameraman was lighting the next shot, they could explain things to you and talk about it. And I used to type all the notes, so then they'd look at them and see if they were good enough. So it was really a very good training. And after 3 films, which was, I suppose, about a year and a half, I was promoted and told I could go out on my own. And
what was the first film that you did as as the script supervisor, not as an assistant?
Well, it was a horrendous thing called, it was an old Mother Riley. They were a comic act in England, and I thought after day one, where they never could do the same thing twice, I was in tears, and I said, I'll have to go, I'm no good, I'm no good. But the crew and the director were wonderful and said, no, they can't ever do the same thing twice, they always happen around. So don't even worry about it, don't think about it, just carry on, because even if you told them to pick up something with the left hand, they'd do it with the right, so don't worry. And they were so nice to me, I suppose, because I was the youngest there. I didn't lose faith, and then I got called back to go on to the second unit of The Third Man, and then I used to also take notes for Carol Reed, who I really do consider was, my first mentor, and he was wonderful, telling you what to do or what worked, and you could see the way he cut shots together, and I see it every night, and how he changed by making the cut shorter or playing a line over somebody, how it can improve or not improve the scene.
And somebody else that you met on that production was Guy Hamilton, correct? Who would also become a kind of important figure in your career.
Yes, Guy was the first assistant director on Night Beat, and he always used to call me Little Angie. He was still calling me Little Angie a couple of years ago. I said, well, I have sort of got bigger since then. But he was wonderfully helpful, and he was, he was probably the best assistant around. And certainly Carol thought so, and he promoted him to being a director.
I think when we think about the work of the script supervisor today, we think that, there are so many digital tools at one's disposal to keep track of what may change from one shot to another, and you can look back at video, you can take digital photographs that you have instantly. What were your tools of the trade when you were starting out doing this in the 40s?
Pencil, paper, ruler, script binder, and a typewriter. Or carbon paper for making 6 copies of everything. And we certainly didn't have even the Polaroid camera then. When I went on The African Queen, the Polaroid camera certainly wasn't available in England. I don't know whether it was in the States, but we didn't have it. So you wrote everything down, people's clothes, exactly what they were. And there was no way of, saying, I'll run it back, whereas today everything's on video. And if time is, if you've got the time, you can run it back. Although there are certain directors who I gather, not in my time, but who don't permit anybody to run it back on video. Yeah,
and of course there's some directors who don't have video, at least not a video village per se, like Clint Eastwood.
Well, probably yes, because he, worked for it before, but certainly they were shooting the back of where I lived in London a couple of weeks ago with Robert Zemeckis, but they certainly had a video village.
When we were speaking the other day, you said you feel very lucky that you were able, from sort of very early in your career, to be working on A-level productions like The African Queen. How did you sort of ascend so quickly to be working with John Huston at the age of 22?
Well, I think it was, I did a film called Pandora and the Flying Dutchman in Spain with Ava Gardner and James Mason. And, they thought I did a good job. And then when Guy went on to The African Queen and Sam Spiegel was the producer, I think Sam must have said something about, well, we need a young strong one to go out to Africa, into the Congo. So, I was the youngest in the business, and there was actually quite a lot of resentment about that when I did get the job. But Sam's attitude was that I would be strong and I wouldn't go sick on them. But he was right in that case.
And what were your first impressions of John Huston?
Well, I met him in the jungle at the camp. He greeted the crew. He was already there, and he was a man who exuded incredible charm. Could charm them. He could make any woman feel she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He chose to. And, we all lived in this camp. The crew, well, ours was like a sort of dormitory thing to sleep in. They had a hut. I mean, Bogey and John and people had a hut, but it was no different. It was built out the same thing, and we all ate the same food. And we all got bitten by the mosquitoes. It was very, very primitive living back on African Queen.
And tell us a little bit about Humphrey Bogart, who you would also work with on Beat the Devil, and Katharine Hepburn.
Well, Katharine Hepburn joined African Queen. I think she was ready and wanted to, see Africa. Though he wasn't so keen, but he came with his wife, Laura McCall, who we all knew as Betty. And he was fine. I mean, John and Bogey survived because they drank whiskey, they didn't drink the water and stuff. Although they were quite right, as we all found out that the water was polluted, the bottled water. And he just got on with his job. I mean, you'd say, we're doing Toto tomorrow, or Katie would say to me, go and tell him to learn such and such a scene. He'd learn it, and, couldn't have been easier. He didn't have any henchman around, he didn't have his own makeup man, he was the makeup man from England, he'd never met before. Same with her, there was, hairdresser as well as the makeup man. Nobody had an entourage as they do today.
What kept you coming back time and again to work with John Huston? What made that relationship so strong in your career?
Well, after African Queen, he asked me to do his next film, which was Moulin Rouge. He told the producer, in this case it was John Wolfe, that, because somebody had written in and said she was too young, you shouldn't have had her. And it was a poison pen letter. And John told Wolfe, well, you never believe poison pen letters, you just put them in the bin. And as far as I'm concerned, she did a wonderful job, and I want her to work again. And it was my first time in Paris, and I fell in love with Paris, and I must admit I've never fallen out of love with it. But, he gave me the opportunity. Oh, he used to play the most terrible jokes on me. I was always the butt, mainly because I was the youngest of the crew most times. But he listened to me. You could give him ideas. You weren't just there to say, left arm, right arm, he's looking left, he's looking right. I could contribute. I could say, well, I don't think that was very good. I think you should go again. It was too slow, or don't you think we need this or that? And John was a man who was always open to suggestions from anybody on the crew. The carpenter, the electrician could go up and say, hey, I've got a good idea. And he would always listen. Well, he might not use it, but it might sow the seeds of another idea in his mind. But he loved people to give him ideas. Yes.
Well, you mentioned often being the youngest on the crew, but of course this was also a time in the film industry where there were relatively few jobs that were available for women. We think, of course, of some women who were film editors, women costume designers, but the script supervisor really was a job dominated by women, and one of the few that was that could be said of. What were the attitudes like at the time to be a woman on a set where almost all of the key positions were men?
Well, I was lucky. I mean, unless they were playing jokes on me, the crew were great, yes. And in England, there were only women script supervisors, or we were called continuity. In America, they did have some men, because when they went on westerns, they said it was cheaper. They didn't have to take a honey wagon for the woman. That was what I was told in the States. But it was, no, they make remarks, and some of the boys, if I ever put a sort of dress on or looked, and they say to John, Bill shouldn't bother to talk to her today, she's obviously going out tonight, and then he'd be, play jokes on me and be terrible. But on the whole, they were fine. You got used to it, and as I got older and wiser, if they said anything, I could answer back and swear at them too.
And John Huston eventually even brought you over to the States to work on his American productions.
Well, he brought me over for The Misfits, yes, but I discovered, which was again very nice of him, which I certainly didn't know at the time. I think his agent said, well, he said he wanted me, and his agent Paul Kerner said, well, she has to be in the contract, because otherwise, under the rules of the union, she can't work, even though I had a green card. Which is what happened, and there was, I had a stand-in, shall we say, or somebody who was being paid actually more than me, but didn't have to do anything. We did a bit on the second unit and messed that up, but it was, well, he did. And, that's how I got on. And so John was, very loyal to me, and he would say to the production people on whatever film, he would tell them, he wanted me, he wanted Stephen Grimes, he wanted the art director, and his sound man, and the cameraman normally, but that was, it's all slightly different. And, if they got their friends they wanted to put on it, he would just say, that's who I want, walk away. So they more or less had to have it, whether they liked it or not.
This is, of course, a famous film for being the final film of both Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe. Can you talk a little bit about what the atmosphere was like during the shooting, particularly with regard to Marilyn, who was already obviously having many personal problems at that time in her life?
Yes, when I arrived, I was told by the Monroe entourage, which was, I think, comprised of about 8 or 9 people, you must never mention the name Laurence Olivier. Well, as he was considered the greatest actor in England, I thought that was a bit much. I didn't answer. But one had known what had gone on The Prince and the Showgirl in London. He couldn't stand her because she was always late. Now, when I first met, when Marilyn arrived, Arthur Miller was there because he was still working on the script. Well, we were always working on the script. We were rewriting it constantly. Daily, you might say. She arrived, and we had a rehearsal, a read-through of the script with all the actors, and I was made to take it. Huston and Miller were not in the room. They told me I'd have to organise it and read with them. And I came out and I said, oh, well, she was sweet and charming, and that day she was. And then we started shooting, and then, the lateness started, and we'd sit there for hours on end. Well, we never know, when she was going to turn up. Gable was always on time, always knew his lines, even if he'd been given the script the night before. And they were given the script the night before, because we were writing it, rewriting it, or John had Arthur Miller rewriting it all the time. Didn't do it himself, but he made Arthur, who I think was worn out at the end. But he said, how many times can you come up with a new idea for the same scene? You've been doing it for 2 years, but Everybody else on the cast was charming. Cinema Ritrovato was wonderful. But Marilyn, slowly one discovered that I was quite innocent in those days. She was, on the pills, and sleeping pills and waking up pills. She also had the monster with her.
Paula Strasberg?
Who?
Paula Strasberg?
Paula Strasberg, yes, who was called Black Bart because she used to wear a black silk, well, it was a tent, which was a large lady, and it was a tent, and a hat and glasses, and nobody was allowed near Marilyn, only Paula. And Marilyn, after you shot a shot, and John would say, printed, Marilyn would not look at John, or even after a take, and look at John and say, was that okay, or were you happy with that? No, she always looked at Paula. And I admired John for his patience, because a lot of other directors, I think, would have killed Paula, or certainly sort of had her physically thrown off the set. But he realized, that nothing would be gained by removing Paula. So she stayed on to the end. And we had two, which I didn't know about, but Houston told me during the filming that Monroe had been much to the pump twice on the film for an overdose. And we had a scene where she was being carried by Clark Gable and was meant to be clinging to him. And she was hitting him. And John had a habit of listening to takes, but not always looking. So he said, and it was Clark who had the words, and I said, well, he said, oh, it was fine. I said, no, it wasn't fine. She's hitting him. She's not supposed to be hitting him. If you don't believe me, ask Clark. He's got her in his arms. And Clark totally agreed and had been saying to her, no, dear, you're going to be embracing me, not hitting me. Well, we did it 6 times, and nothing improved. And John then said, cut. And he said, I've had many things said about me, but I'm not going to have Marilyn's death on my, at my hand. Send her to be depilled or wherever. So she was sent off to Hollywood with some doctor or other, and came back in a week with new improvement. I have to say she may have been off one set of pills, she was back on something else. And, that's how we progressed. It was very, very difficult for the company, for everybody. It was very costly. And she, said some rather unpleasant things about me, I discovered, to me, but it didn't worry me because I realized, she was a very disturbed woman. I didn't forgive her for her behavior, not me, but, and I can only say that I think that well, the best film I think she ever made or appeared in was certainly Some Night at Hop, and she caused, I think, Billy Wilder to nearly have a nervous breakdown. And I personally can't see her as the great actress, and that she was used to talk about, I'd read articles that she was reading all these intellectual books. Frankly, I don't believe it. But then perhaps when she was on The Misfit, she was at that stage in her life where, everything had gone wrong, and, there was very little hope. And we did say at the end of the film, if she lives another year, we'll all be very surprised. Well, she didn't last much longer.
Well, you worked with a lot of stars who kind of had these very turbulent personal lives, whether it was Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor in Reflections in a Golden Eye that we saw here, or Marilyn or Montgomery Clift also in that film. Did you develop over the years any sense of why there seemed to be this correlation between superstardom and this turbulence in the emotional lives of these great stars.
Well, I think some of them really couldn't handle the adulation, because if they were a star, they feted wherever they went. They were indulged. They were given more or less anything they asked for, and a lot of them, really weren't capable of handling it. They weren't disciplined. They'd surround themselves with sycophantic people who were siphoning the money out of them. I feel very sorry for some of them.
When you take us a little bit through the two Houston films that are screening here, the Reflections in a Golden Eye and Beat the Devil, and what your experiences were like on those two pictures.
Well, they're two very, very different types of picture. Beat the Devil was first, so I'll go with that. I mean,
another movie famously being written as it was being made.
Oh yes, we arrived in Ravello with a script that John didn't like it and was being tossed away, and David Selznick, who was not our producer, he was our husband in this case of Jennifer Jones, suggested Truman Capote to Houston, who I think had heard of, no, I'm not sure he had heard of him, but anyway, he said he'd just written Stazione in Termini, and he was in Rome, so he could come down. And little Truman arrived. I mean, he was wonderful, I adored him, but, and John got on with him, and we used to write, Truman would write the scenes, he would give them to me, I'd take them out to the set in the morning and give them to John and the artist, and then the artist would all, not Bobby, he didn't like doing ad-lib dialogue, but the others all rewrote all their lines, and it would be completely ad-lib all day, and then, because I had my trusty typewriter, I would then in the evening go back and see Truman and say, well, this is what we really shot today, and as you've written a scene for tomorrow, you better read this now and you go and adjust what you're going to give me tomorrow, and then that'll get changed, and that's the way we used to work. It was mad, but he was great fun, and the cast on Beat the Devil were fun. Peter Lorre, Robert Morley, who was, very good. They were all very good at doing ad-libs, and it got madder and madder as we went along. And we really and truly did not know what the story was going to be. We used to develop each day.
And Bogey was in a car accident during the making of the film.
Yes, it had Richard cracked his teeth and everything, and he was. Laura McCall was not with us on that, but he, coped with it all. They said he got the teeth fixed, and and he didn't have an entourage. He didn't have anybody with him.
And it wasn't a significant setback to the production of it?
No. It wasn't his fault at all. I think it was John said some mad escapade, because John's always playing, practical jokes. Or we had another funny one. We were on a boat out of Sorrento. Yes, we'd sailed from Sorrento and we'd been shooting all day. And the cameraman had the captain turn the boat round and round and round for the light. But nobody had remembered to tell the captain we'd finished shooting. So we'd finished shooting, and then the English crew said, what time are we going to be in Sorrento? I don't know. And none of them spoke a word of Italian. I wasn't cook, but at least I tried. So I went and asked the captain, and I said, what time will we be back in Sorrento? And he looked at me and said, Sorrento? We're sailing to Africa. That's where it was last headed. So we were 4 or 5 hours. I think we were the coastal patrol, and everybody's looking for us. We're a lost ship at sea. So we didn't get back till about 10 at night.
And tell us a bit about Mr. Brando, one of the subjects of the festival this year, of an homage, and your impressions of him.
Well, I've been an admirer certainly since I saw him in Streetcar, and so I was pleased to be working with him and Elizabeth, and he was fine. But when we arrived in Rome, we started shooting in Garden City, New Jersey, for the Army barracks stuff. I can't remember, he may have been there, but then he only had to do walks because we didn't do any dialogue, Greek dialogue scenes. They used to have to walk past the barrack thing. And then when we got to Rome, Marlon decided, he told the producer he wanted, by the morning, a brand new Harley Davidson, and he wanted to sleep in Cinecittà, which is, not allowed. You don't sleep in the studio. Dino De Laurentiis wasn't even in Italy, so they're searching for him around the world. And I think, God knows, they eventually found him, and poor Dino, whoever, had just be sending cables and what have you. They didn't have instant phones there. Yes, he could sleep there, but of course he didn't sleep there, nor did he ever get on the Harley Davidson. And he came with his own makeup man, and the makeup man's wife, who was his stand-in. Well, the cameraman went mad because the stand-in, the woman, had jet black hair, and Marlon's was light brown, and totally different complexion colour. And anyway, he came on the set to do a costume test, and Houston saw him and said, "Now go and wash your face, Marlon. Take all that makeup off." "No, I wear it." He said, "Well, you wear it and I don't shoot, so, it's one of the two. Go and wash your face. Because I'm not shooting with you with makeup on." So he did. His American makeup man had a very nice holiday for 12 weeks, and Marlon never wore makeup in the film.
I think it could be mere coincidence, but when we look at some of the filmmakers that you had the most prominent relationships with, Huston and Frankenheimer and Robert Aldrich and Sidney Lumet, we think of them as being quite man's men directors of movies with hard-driving action or police stories or this sort of thing. Were you attracted to that type of picture, or was it rather a coincidence that you associated yourself with so many of these alpha male filmmakers?
No, it wasn't certainly by choice. I do remember when I was offered The Dirty Dozen with Rob Aldrich, I was also asked to do A Man for All Seasons, which is what I wanted to do because I was more interested in history. I don't particularly like army things. But because I'd worked for Seven Arts before, they said, "Oh, no, you've got to come and work with us." And that's how I went on to Dirty Dozen. But of my choice, it would definitely have been Fred Zinnemann and A Man for All Seasons. And in fact, Fred lived on my road where I still live today.
Talking about The Dirty Dozen from a continuity perspective, being a movie with 12 major characters, and a director who I gather was much more disposed to shooting a lot of coverage than some of the other directors that you worked with.
Oh yes, he was very much the old school. He was very much in control of the actors. I mean, he didn't allow them to mess about. The older ones were wonderful anyway. Lee Marvin was, he knew his lines. He was wonderful for continuity. He had a couple of days of being a little hungover when he arrived in the morning and not quite able to shoot, but everybody loved Lee. And the rest of them, Ernie Borgnine, they were all fine. The younger ones, especially, with John Cassavetes, Donald Sutherland, and all the others, it was more difficult to control, but what was his name now? He sang in the film. He suddenly had to disappear because he got bookings in Las Vegas or somewhere like that, so they literally had to sort of write him out. He got hung up the tree, you know, so we had to find a death scene for him, you know, which wasn't planned at all. But we used to shoot, I mean, we were supposed to have 2 weeks of night work, 7 weeks later. You know, it was quite tiring, shall we say, you know, doing the same shots and going 360 degrees of, you know, to put a, what do you call them, things that, when you throw things that explode.
Grenade.
Grenades. We had to put the grenade down a hole. And every bloody one was 360. Boys would say to me, what are we shooting? I said, round the you know, the grenade again tonight, and then the half track would break down, so that would have to be another night. And it did go on. We were very much over schedule on that one. But, you know, it was, I think, financially a very successful film.
Well, I'm sure that's a question that gets asked a lot, but did you ever feel you had the sense during the making of these films that, you know, this film was going to really be a great film, or this was going to be a film that was going to stand the test of time, and that this one wasn't? You know, that the you know, Reflections in a Golden Eye was some kind of an eccentric misfire, but The Dirty Dozen was a movie people would still be watching 50 years later.
No, none of us, including, I think, the producer and the director. You always hope that your film is going to be a success and the audience is going to like it, because after all, that's who we're making it for an audience. But no, I don't think, you know, we certainly didn't know, and as Carroll did in his heart when we made The Third Man, that it was going to be, you know, the success it has been. No, I don't think anybody knows. You hope, that's all you can say. And certainly, you know, when you've worked on some rubbish, oh yes, that, you know it's, you know, fodder, and especially if it's a sort of B thing, you know, it's purely being made for money, and you do your best, you try to, you know, do your job properly, but yes, you know, when that's not going to, you know, cause any commotions, nobody's going to be out there telling you this is the greatest thing.
Tell us a bit about working with John Frankenheimer, particularly on the wonderful Ronin. You worked with him during what we'd say the sort of second half of his career in the 80s and 90s predominantly.
What was exciting, though, and I have to say this first, with John was going to Afghanistan with him on the Horseman. You know, it was a country that not too many people have visited, and it was extraordinary at that time. Barmian still existed, and we were around there. We were camped in Barmian, actually, at one time. And he was a very strong figure and very impetuous. He would shout and scream sometimes at the props or people and go a bit mad. Most of us don't take any notice of it. And we took 6 Afghans back to Spain with us to show the Spanish sort of well rights, because they do write in a totally different way. And John had them all for dinner, the 6, and me and his wife and people. Anyway, his wife was ordering the dinner at the hotel, and it was a very nice hotel in Madrid, and she said, I need 24 chickens. So Dad said, but there are only 8 of you. I mean, believe me, 24. Well, what they didn't know was, I mean, these Afghan gentlemen were very tall. They were sort of 6 of them. And, you know, my hand would fit into, well, both my hands would have fitted into one of those. And they really all ate a whole chicken. But of course, they served in Spanish, they were very polite. They served Mrs. Frankenheimer and me first, and I said, no, give it to them, whole chicken. You know. But, and then they wanted to know where Mecca was, none of us knew, but we point in a direction and say, they look it now on their mats. And they were really rather wonderful. And John then said, well, we want to buy them a present. You know, I want to give them some saddles. I said, no, they don't want that. They loved the Polaroid camera, and that was, I used to have to take that, and in Hollywood was saying, why is she asking for so much film? If they were good, if they were a good boy, they got a Polaroid. If they behaved and did what Mr. John wanted, he's not having a Polaroid. So this used to go on with it. Well, that was the bribe to get them to drive, because the game of Bush Cassie, you couldn't see it, it's an enormous field, and they were told, you're on that horse. You're on that, and the lead was on the white horse, but they wanted the white horse, so they used to bash each other to get off. And John, used to be screaming in the morning, why aren't they ready? I said, getting them on the horses, that's enough for getting the clothes on them, you're keeping their costumes. And he, used to go a bit mad. But once we were back in Spain, the next year, because we had a year's gap between the two. And unfortunately, I don't think the script was particularly good. I mean, it could have been a more interesting film if it won the Prix Goncourt in France, the novel. But Roland, he was in his element because he loved. Frankenheimer loved motor cars, and he could bash them up, and we had all sorts of things, and he really loved all the chasing around, and he loved France too, so we started, we went to Avignon, to the south of France, up the mountains, back to Nice, back to Paris, back to Nice again, and he, it was a film that actually, when I got there was a script and nobody appeared to like it. And it was literally written in 2 weeks by, he doesn't take a credit on the screen, in his own name anyway. It was David Mamet who wrote it in 2 weeks, and that's the script we actually shot on Ronin.
And how would you compare Frankenheimer as a director of actors, how he worked with the actors, how he worked with the crew, to Houston, just in terms of their temperament, their energy, their approach?
Don never lost his temper, and was always calm and got on with everybody, and he could always be the diplomat. That's certainly not true of John, who could be extremely charming and a generous host, but he could also be extremely volatile.
John Frankenheimer.
Oh, John Frankenheimer, he screamed and shouted, yes. He was, macho man. No, there were two, I would have said, very different personalities.
And because we are in Italy, we should probably talk also about your long collaboration with Franco Zeffirelli, who, of course, I imagine quite a different personality, and somebody coming from the world of theater and opera. Tell us a little bit about that collaboration and what you enjoyed about working with him.
Well, I still see Franco now, who's, 93. I mean, we share the same birthday, but as I always tell him, we're not the same year. But, no, I love him because he's taught me, about colour and design and opera, because although I'd, gone to opera from a very early age, in fact, I went on, it was the third man that I saw operas, but his are certainly more flamboyant, colourful. They're wonderful to look at. And I think that's his first love. The first film I did with him was Young Toscanini with Elizabeth Taylor again, and that wasn't easy. I mean, he always got on with Elizabeth, because they'd done Taming of the Shrew. But it was, again, we didn't have a decent script, and he was always messing about with it, and Franco would say, let's do this, and you'd say, no, we don't need those amount of words, Franco. He'd say, well, in Italian. I said, yes, I know, but we're not doing it in Italian, and you know, less is more with words. But when we did Hamlet, you see, he couldn't change the script, because you can't change, well, I mean, it was adapted, yes, cut down, but you can't change the words on Hamlet. So if an actor ever made a fluff, and actors who've played Shakespeare they know when they've even said one word wrong, but they carry on. And he always used to scream if I'd say, no, he knows exactly what he did, but you know, one word was wrong or something, we change it. So you're bloody Mrs. Shakespeare. But, you know, he appreciated the classics, because after all, he'd done that in his theatre work in London when I remember going to see his Much Ado About Nothing with Maggie Smith and Robert Stevens and the rest of that cast, and it was magical. I mean, it really was. The stage, the whole theatre sort of lit up. And, you know, he done opera. So I was very glad to work with him, because it's a totally different personality.
We're almost out of time, but I wanted to see if there were any questions from the audience for Angela before we wrap things up. Yes, you can go on the end here. Yes.
Could you say something about working with Polanski on the incredibly bloody Macbeth, since we're talking about Shakespeare?
Oh yes, Polanski.
I'll repeat my question now with the mic for the camera.
Yes, I could hear that.
Talk about Polanski's Macbeth.
Yes. Oh, well, Polanski certainly knew the play well, and he was not easy, but I think Roman is an extraordinarily talented director. And we were on it a long time. You know, we had some disaster, well, I mean, physical and the rain and everything, but he's a perfectionist, and really mastered the language. I mean, if Roman didn't know a word or had heard it for that time, he'd find sentences to use that during the day so that it really penetrated. But he could recite the play. I mean, he learned it, and it was, you know, some interesting casting in it too. We had one day where nobody kind of knew what to say to him, because one of the children that had been chosen, when they asked her, she was only 3, when they asked her what her name was Sharon, and nobody kind of knew how to tell Roman, because, you know, what had happened. But he had Kenneth Tynan there as his, well, he was the sort of Shakespeare and the literary person, and one day got the blood and everything going, and Kenneth said to me, oh, I think it's too much. I said, well, I'm not going to interfere. I think Roman knows a bit more. You want to discuss that, how much blood is going to be around? You tell him, that's not something I am going to bring up. But he was totally in control. You know, he couldn't, after Macbeth, he could never work in England again because of the case, which is a loss to England, you know, but France is gaining.
Yeah, I think there was one there, gentleman in the blue, yes?
Well, I was going to ask about Polanski, but since
okay.
you already did, I can ask about Sidney Lumet. Which
yes.
film did you work with Lumet on, and what was it like?
I did 2 with Sidney. One was Murder on the Orient Express, and the other one, the title for the moment, it was with Sean Connery and...
The Offense.
Yes, the title changed. Oh no, he was the most disciplined director I would think of all the directors I worked for. We rehearsed for 5 or 10 days, depending on the subject matter, etc. The actors could discuss their parts, their backstories, and then he planned every single shot of the film on his script. And when we started shooting, the actors could not say, oh, you know, what's my motivation for this scene? He said, you've had your, 2 weeks to discuss it, and we've rehearsed it. And he, really was the most disciplined, I think. He definitely was the most disciplined director I ever worked with. And I have great admiration for him.
And maybe we'll take one last one in the back there.
Hi. Can you recall any reactions to Reflections of the Golden Eye when it came out, especially with Marlon Brando taking on such a sexually ambiguous part when we used to associate him with quite like a male symbol for masculinity?
A question about the reactions to Reflections in a Golden Eye at the time of the release, particularly to Brando playing such a sexually ambiguous character after his being kind of a macho icon.
Oh yes, well there were reactions, and actually Houston wasn't always 100% clear. I remember the scene where he has the cream, which I had suggested it went earlier on in the film, but the only criticism I have of Marlon's performance in the film was his voice and putting on this strange accent, which I had enormous difficulty in understanding. And I'm sitting there on the set with the script, and it ruined it for me. But well, the film was actually shot in colour, but then John had this idea of sort of desaturating it and giving it this golden, because of the title, which never really worked, and I thought it was a pretty awful print that we've all seen, and I bought the video in London just recently because I thought I'd better remind myself of the film. I thought, he gave a very interesting performance as, I would have said, a homosexual character who obviously could never admit it to himself. And it is a strange film. I've always thought it was a very strange story. And I didn't quite know why we made it, but perhaps I think it was Houston and Ray Stark, and they, he wanted to do it originally, if I'm not wrong, I think Elizabeth had agreed to do it, but I think Monty Clift was going to do it, but it was before, because she always looked after Monty Clift, but of course he died by then. So, in a way, Monty would have been slightly more perfect casting, but I certainly think Brando's performance, he did, give you the feeling that he is homosexual, even if he doesn't know it completely.
I think we have to stop there, but Angela Allen, thank you so much. Your second, but hopefully not last time in Bologna. It's a total pleasure.
Thank you.